So the last video that I did was about the Southern strategy, and if you haven't watched that one yet, it would be helpful to watch that one before watching this one. But just to recap, the Southern strategy was a political movement in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s that was meant to shift the solid South white Democratic Party to get the white voting bloc out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. And not only did it work in the South, it also worked across the nation and was really cemented with Reagan's re-election in 1984, where he won every single state in the Union minus one for the Republican Party. So the moral majority movement was started in 1979 by Jerry Falwell Sr. Jerry Falwell Sr., just so you know, is an avowed segregationalist. He said that we cannot cross the lines that God has drawn, referring to the separation of the races. And this again goes back to what was preached during Jim Crow. I covered this in that video about Jim Crow, that throughout that era, the Tower of Babel was taught that God, he separated all people into different nations and languages and ethnic groups, and that it was meant to stay that way. So this is his theology. He was constantly hosting some of the leaders of the segregation movement on his radio program, and just very staunch in his views. He founded one of the segregation academies in 1967 that we were talking about in the last video, and also Liberty University, that had a lot of issues complying with federal policies, the desegregation policies. So this is the guy who's leading this movement, and what he's doing is he's mobilizing evangelical Christians to vote for particular candidates with a certain agenda. And their big push is in the 1980 presidential election to mobilize Christian voters to vote for Ronald Reagan. The agenda of the moral majority, this is their agenda that they stated, was one, to support traditional family values; two, was against the narrative in the media and in entertainment against the traditional family; three, they were against the Equal Rights Amendment and assault the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty in the Cold War, which was an arms de-escalation deal during the Cold War. They opposed state recognition of homosexuality. They were for prayer in schools, and they opposed abortion. They were an anti-abortion movement. So if you look at this agenda, there's nothing bad on this agenda. That's really not even a political agenda at all. It really falls in the sphere of family and education. But what's sad and shocking about this list, it's not what's on the list, it's what's left off of the list. And if this is the moral movement, this is God's movement, and nowhere on this list is helping the poor, or specifically helping the historically oppressed and marginalized black community that is coming out of 250 years of chattel slavery, 100 years of segregation, is now sort of trying to find their footing, but still very, very poor in 1979. And this is a major blind spot, again, in the church, in this movement, that no one's thinking, hey, maybe we should help the poor, maybe we should align with God's heart for the oppressed. Instead, there's this list of issues. Again, it's not bad, but we're missing God's heart, who came to preach good news to the poor, and who is constantly moving about. When Jesus came to the earth, he had the biggest problem with the rich. He said the Pharisees, the problem is they were lovers of money, and he was welcomed and celebrated among poor communities, common people, and that's who he was with primarily. So there's this major omission of the moral majority movement. So what they do is they usher in Ronald Reagan, who himself opposed the Civil Rights Acts, but he fit the other agenda items for the moral majority, and they really liked him, and so they ushered in a Reagan presidency. And what we see during the Reagan presidency is really the beginning of the neoconservative movement and also neoliberal economics. So Reagan's chief economic advisor was Milton Friedman, who is famous for his idea that greed is good, and if we're all greedy and we all pursue our own economic self-interest, then everything will work out, which turns out to be one of the worst economic ideas of all time. And 40 years after this kickstart of neoliberal economics and the trickle-down economics, which is the idea if you give money to the rich, it will eventually trickle down to the poor, which is not true. If you give money to the rich just get richer. And I'm going to show you this statistic that will demonstrate the 40 years of neoliberal economics. And the sad reality is that it's hurt the white community. It has almost completely gutted the middle class. Worker rights have eroded. The tax system, Reagan is the one who slashed income tax and promised that all of the economic growth that it was going to create was going to more than make up for the money that was lost, which never happened. And he was the first president to oversee adding over $1 trillion to the federal debt, and added more debt by far than any other president before him. Even though he's supposed to be conservative, fiscally conservative, he had this sort of deal where the government's the enemy and he wanted to cut welfare programs, but he was totally cool with putting money into war. And so we've all really been hurt by neoliberal economics, unless you're in the 1% or the 0.1%, you're probably not statistically. But specifically for this storyline, these policies have hurt the black community more than anything else. And after the civil rights era, you see a rise in black income and black wealth, black asset creation. Well, that stops in the 1980s, and for the last 40 years, we've seen a decline. People seem to think in the white community, oh, civil rights, after civil rights, everything's better, and black income's on the rise. It's not. Black income and wealth have been dropping for decades now, and black wealth is actually below Hispanic wealth now. And I'll put a chart to show you where white, black, and Hispanic wealth, what has happened in the racial categories as well, just so you can see how neoliberal economics have hurt the black community in particular. But the worst part about the Reagan presidency, and the thing that really, really devastated the black community, is he ushered in the war on drugs. He took Nixon's political war on drugs declared in 1971 and made it a real war. And he almost single-handedly created the mass incarceration system that now houses 2.3 million inmates and giving us the biggest prison population of any nation in the world. And we're going to discuss that in the next video really in depth. But right now, I just want us to see how the Southern strategy and how the moral majority played on the same prejudice in our heart, this resentment in our heart toward the black community, and it's ushered in just unbelievable evil. You can't even count it. The millions of lives that have been destroyed by the war on drugs. It's not just 2.3 million people in prison, it's the millions more that are on parole and probation, and the tens of millions that have become felons because of this, who now can't get jobs, and in some places they can't vote and can't qualify for government assistance or loans for education, and the list goes on and on. It is the third era of oppression in the black community, from slavery to Jim Crow to the war on drugs and mass incarceration, which has been called the New Jim Crow. Michelle Alexander wrote an incredible book called The New Jim Crow. And again, we're going to talk about this in the next video, but just to see the way that this residual hatred has continued to plague the white church in America, and the moral agenda has got to be to care for the poor, the hurting, the broken, the marginalized. And this is the time for us to repent, to realign for reformation in our society and for lasting impact and change. We're at a pivotal point, and we have an opportunity to shift and to realign with God's heart. We've got to know what God's heart is for this time. So the next video, like I said, it's the war on drugs, and it should be a link popping up here just in a second. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.